Sleep well, Mr. Harker. Hello everyone, and welcome to day 6 of Terrorthon. Thank you very much, Mrs. Bush. Today we're talking about the distribution company Hammer Film Productions, which dates all the way back to the 30s. One of the most influential faces of horror, you could say, launched the careers of several all-time great actors, and yeah, let's get into the history of them. So, Hammer Film Productions was founded in November 1934 by a man named William Hines, registering the Hammer Productions Limited trademark. The name came from Hines' stage name, which was Will Hammer, which he took from the area in London where he grew up, Hammersmith. The first film released by Hammer was called The Public Life of Henry IX in 1935. Unfortunately, it's lost today, but it was Britain's first ever Best Picture nominee at the Oscars, not too shabby. Hines then met the former cinema owner Enrique Carreras, and they formed the Exclusive Film Distribution Company. 4 more movies came out from then, until Hammer formally entered liquidation in 1937. But the distributor Exclusive survived, and then distributed films made by other companies. And after World War II came to an end, Carreras resurrected Hammer as the film production arm of Exclusive, where they mostly made cheap domestic films simply to turn a profit. And the first venture into horror for Hammer Productions was The Quatermass Experiment in 1955. So intense was the script alone, let alone the completed movie, that the British Board of Film Censors told Hammer to tone it down, basically. They thought that people would be being sick watching the movie and that no one would be able to sit through it. But Hammer ignored their warnings. Then, the big one. Hammer started remaking the Universal classic monsters, starting with the movie Curse of Frankenstein in 1957. This launched the career of British actor Peter Cushing, who you may know best as Grand Moff Tarkin from the Star Wars movies. Because movie censorship had loosened so much since the original Universal movies, Hammer were allowed to tone up the blood, the sex, it was all in colour, and it was just a much more cerebral experience than the originals. And then the very next year they released their remake of Dracula, which starred Christopher Lee. Now, I think everyone knows the name Christopher Lee, and if you don't, what are you doing with your life? But yeah, he was in movies before this, of course, but this launched him into a global superstar. And then in 1959, Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing both returned with The Mummy in 1959. All of the 3 horror remakes I've just mentioned received at least 4 sequels each. I think Dracula actually has 6, it's quite a lot. Unfortunately though, when Rosemary's Baby and Night of the Living Dead came out around that era, Hammer simply couldn't compete anymore, and they actually slowly stopped releasing movies. Until 1980, when they released the TV anthology series Hammer House of Horror. It was only 13 episodes, but it was a smash hit, and anyone who grew up in that time will remember this show. And then unfortunately the company went into total hibernation in the mid-80s. But then, in May 2007, Hammer Film Productions was sold to a Dutch media tycoon who wanted to revive the brand. And since then we've had such movies as Beyond the Rave in 2008, a remake of Let the Right One In called Let Me In 2010, you've probably heard of that, and I'm pretty much certain you've heard of The Woman in Black, which came out in 2012. Those are all Hammer movies. So while it was sad to see this horror icon fall so far, they are now back and ready for action, and I can't wait to see what they release next. See you tomorrow.
Sing us a song, Kate Bush!